right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. This is Seattle Pandemic Shutdown, day 89, I believe. And oh boy, are we in it now, kids? I don't know what to tell you. You know, with this Black Lives Matter riots, they absolutely ransacked Manhattan last night. And I know that the idea is to make a lot of noise and keep rioting, basically, so that the government, city, law enforcement, the police department, whatever, is forced to do what you want them to do. And these different riots in different cities do pertain to different cases in different cities, not just the George Floyd, right? The Minneapolis situation. There's different cases that are similar in different cities. So the issue is, ultimately, are you going to get what you want? Now, I don't know the whole history of protestation and or civil unrest in America, or the efficacy of rioting, for example. But here's something that will very likely happen in a place like New York City. There's corollary data here. So there's corollary pieces of information that start to paint a picture. So just today I saw a tweet about people in Long Island lining up around the block to buy guns. Last night there was widespread violence and looting, and store owners of various backgrounds and ethnicities and everything else. You had the storefront Sikhs holding it down. You had rooftop Koreans coming back. God bless them. People were shot, though. I mean, there's all the memes in the world about, mess around and get shot. And it can be funny, but it's not funny in real life. In real life, people think, I'm going to go loot, and I'm going to jack this store, and the store owner isn't going to shoot me in the face. You have no idea what they're going to pull out from under the counter, especially if they're not a franchise. You see, the franchises do tend to have insurance. They do not want their employees doing things like that, right? So the result is people getting shot, and then people get mad, and then people want to burn that building down, etc., and down it goes into a downward spiral. Now, after all this is over, assuming it ends, after this is all over, quote unquote, what's going to happen? So, what you would call capital flight. So, if you own one of those shops, or own a pile of rubble now, in Manhattan, like downtown, what was it, Fifth Avenue? That's the big shopping corridor. If you own one of those shops, how incentivized are you to reopen your shop, restock the shelves, and sweep up the glass and go back to business as usual, when you know that in the future, if the police in some other place do something bad, that people in your city will riot, and law enforcement will do nothing to stop them, whether they can or not. Whether they could have or not, they were unable to. So why would you reopen your business and act like everything's normal again? Oh, that's over. Don't have to worry about that anymore. I don't know. I mean, the closest thing I would compare it to is maybe like tornadoes and hurricanes. How elastic are markets where there's tornadoes and hurricanes frequently destroying things? Because now we've set precedent. I mean, we've had Black Lives Matter riots in places like Ferguson and Baltimore and such. Never just rampaging through, lower Manhattan. And just the And this is an interracial thing too. I'm seeing plenty of white people. They had white people down in SoCal, like stealing surfboards, and it's just like, all right, I guess we're just stealing everything. It's not even about stealing iPhones or anything anymore. We're just stealing surfboards. Come on. But yeah, capital flight, right? Will these businesses just move out and just say, nope, we're done, we're out of here? So then what you have is contraction in the tax base. And I've already mentioned this in my drive to work videos. I am not an economist. I just try to think about these things, and I've read a couple pages of human action. So the tax base will shrink as people flee these urban centers. And like the gun purchase, people make this turn in their mind, right? You don't just go, well, I'm gonna abandon my anti-gun principles and go buy a gun and just be a hypocrite. No, you think it through. You change your mind, whatever that means, to change your mind about something important like that. So if you think of yourself as an urban person, a city person, and you decide to change your mind because you're looking at what's going on, you're looking at, I don't know what, the coming Great Depression. We just don't know what's going to happen. But here's what happens. If the capital leaves, then the commerce leaves, then you end up with a shrinkage in the tax base. Then the city budgets are reduced for things like metro, for things like law enforcement training, firefighters, etc., schools, right? I mean, and then with a hollowed out, central commerce, shell, I don't know how you then, so foot traffic also, right? So some businesses exist because there's other business there. And now that business is gone, so now those businesses are no longer viable because the only reason people stopped there was because it was there with all the other traffic. Hot dog stands, for example, right? If there's no people, there's no one to eat hot dogs, so there's no profitability from your hot dog stand without a lot of people around. So, I mean, maybe it's more durable than I think it is, like especially say New York City. I mean, this isn't the first time there's been widespread rioting and everything, and in basically war in the streets. In fact, you watch Gangs of New York, the draft riots, right? Complete bedlam, gangs fighting each other, people just killing black people because they blame them for the draft because of the Civil War, killing foreigners, killing rich people, everybody just killing each other. And then, the Navy started shelling the city. I mean, it could get a lot worse than it is now, right? So maybe it's all more durable than I think that it is, but every city that has this kind of widespread destruction, I mean, you got to have the budget to clean it all up, and then you have to reattract the capital to get businesses open again. People have to rebuild a community, right? And I'm sure we've all seen some viral clips now of, some poor old lady lives in a neighborhood, and now her pharmacy is gone, her grocery store is gone, her salon is gone. Everything that she would normally shop for was in walking distance of her house or her apartment, and now it's all gone. She doesn't have a car. You're not going to have a lot of metro for a while. She's going to have to commute, and her whole life is upended. Never mind the lives of all the store owners and everything else. And in a lot of instances, the thing is that these are black-owned businesses too. And, I mean, again, ultimately, do you get what you want? If it is a certain legal outcome from the city, like they want to indict all four of the officers involved in the Minneapolis killing. I don't know if there's legal precedent for that. It's kind of like Rodney King, like they were all supposed to stop each other from doing a thing, but they were all basically doing what you would probably call business as usual. Now that is actually the major point of contention, right? Is that business as usual? Is that what we're normally doing? Well, maybe we can change that. Well, I'm not really hearing a lot of coherent police reforms. Like, the most obvious stuff is what we need to give is more hands-on physical constraint training, like jiu-jitsu or something. Like, you need to be somewhat proficient in it in order to walk a beat, I guess. I mean, but again, you have to pay for that training. People have to put in the time for that training. You have to, do testing over time to make sure people are still proficient. It's just one of these problems that it's obviously, if this is with a lot of problems, okay, you guys? A lot of problems, we go, why do we still have this problem? It seems so simple, because it's more complicated than you think it is. It's like, if it weren't, we would have already solved it already. And it's everything from climate change to taxes to the national debt to our military spending, our foreign wars, our racism, everything. If it seems like you have a simple solution to any of these problems, trust me, your solution has already been heard, is illogical, or has been tried and doesn't work, right? Or has not been implemented well, I suppose. So this is why we constantly have to hear from communists about how unfair capitalism is, and then you have to argue with them about the inequities of communism, etc., blah, blah, blah. I think you get the picture. So when it comes to something like majorly reforming law enforcement practices, you're talking again about budgets, you're talking about a commitment to it, you're talking about injecting the values that you want into an entire wing of every city government across the country, right? They all need to adopt these values, and these values are, we don't use excessive force, which is a relatively subjective distinction that exists in each and every scenario, right? And the reality is, the vast majority of law enforcement encounters don't end with any violence whatsoever. Now, you can argue that every encounter with law enforcement is essentially state coercion. Like, you're stopping me to ask me for my ID. You're like stealing time from me. I don't have to listen to you. However, that's not how it really plays out in real life, right? Because they are essentially state agents. Now, at the same time, these situations where you have violence, you have arrests, you have the shootings and the killings, they are more than zero, which is too many. But you also factor in how many encounters law enforcement have with people all over the country every day. And this is the thing that the Republicans keep hammering on, and it's true. I'm not sure exactly what to do with it, but if you look at where these things keep happening, it is Louisville, it is Minneapolis, it is Detroit, it is, like Ferguson isn't Ferguson essentially Louisville? Democrat-controlled cities. So it's people who vote largely Democratic, living in cities, policing other Democrats who are who are black in these instances often. So apparently Democrats don't know how to police black people. Now, that doesn't mean that Republican areas don't have their own problems with policing black people, but all of this movement and all of this outrage and all these events keep being centered around large urban, largely Democratic liberal centers, So it's something to think about. Like, again, these problems are more complicated than you probably think they are, because we're talking about millions of people all over the country, various different environments, locales. You have different history, background to every different city, different legacies of different kinds of discrimination, housing discrimination, etc., population, locations, and then again, law enforcement budgets and stop. You have a stop sign. The red octagon means stop. So you get different outcomes in different places, you know? But yeah, I mean, I assume that there will continue to be violence tonight. I'm asking you nicely to, like, not, you know? I'm asking you nicely to not, but, you know, you're gonna do what you think you have to do, and I can't tell you what necessarily will work, quote unquote, work or not. But a lot of people got hurt last night. We're gonna be piling up a lot of bodies, man. And I mean, this can either get a lot worse or it can start getting better. And I don't know how we come back from this, because we're looking at a whole barrage of different really intense problems headed our way. And it's going to crush a lot of people, like in ways that you can't even anticipate. Oof. Did that scare you? Good. All right. I guess we're in phase 2 or 3. All right, get pandemic over. I don't know. Maybe you're all out rioting. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.